Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you all on here this morning. My name's Amanda Steenson. I'm a project manager with the Construction Industry Training Board, and you're all welcome to our business improvement event on CSR scheme changes. I'm joined here this morning with Jonathan Cockey from the CEF, who looks after the CSR scheme, and they're supporting this event this morning. So thanks very much for joining us this morning, Jonathan. You're very welcome. And we're also joined with William McMullen, Director at CITB ANI, and William is going to lead the Q&A this morning at the end of both mine and Jonathan's presentation. So just to kick us off this morning, we are, just in terms of our timing, we're kicking off here. I'm going to do a short update on our products and services, and then I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, and Jonathan is going to take you through the scheme changes. And then I'll come back on and talk about the grants specifically for the CSR scheme. And then we'll just have a Q&A then around 10 past 11, and William will say he'll lead on that. So in terms of a bit of housekeeping then before we get started, any questions just in relation to the Q&A, there is a box at the bottom of your screen you will find on the Zoom presentation here this morning. Just put your questions in there and we'll go through those and we'll get those answered later on, as I say, in the Q&A section. All cameras are turned off and you are automatically muted as well. So the Q&A is really for any questions that are coming through. We will aim to close around 11:30, but we'll see how the Q&A goes later on this morning. So yes, again, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on board. So I'm just really going to fill you in then on really our products and services. We have online our full products and services presentation. So feel free to share that with your colleagues. I'll send you out a link whenever I'm sending out the slide deck from this morning. We are recording this event this morning as well, so we will put that on the training section of our website, and we'll also send you the link to this recording. And again, you can share that with any of your colleagues in the company too for their information. So just touching on our products and services and just a brief overview of what's happening at the CITB ANI at the moment. So in terms of our training, what we have going on at Nuts Corner, we have our scaffolding, the scissor scaffolding scheme. We deliver the part 1, part 2 and the basic and advanced courses for the scissor scheme. We also have our health and safety awareness courses, which are available in the mobile training unit. And this is free to all registered employers to CITB ANI. And we try to get it to any site. Our mobile training unit seats 16 people, and it's used for health and safety awareness trainers, the likes of which would be abrasive wheels, manual handling, that type of training. Anybody that does training in the mobile training unit, we will provide a certificate of attendance. If you have suitable premises and it's maybe not suitable for them to come out to site, we can still send our trainer out to your premises and deliver the training there. It is a quite heavily booked up facility, the mobile training unit, so if it's something you're thinking about doing or you would like to bring out to site or whatever, just book it in advance would be my advice to you. If you go onto our website into the training section, to be able to find a flyer with all of the course details, the duration, things like that, and the contact details of how you go about to book the mobile training unit, or as I say, a trainer to come out to your premises. In terms of business improvement events then, one of which are on this morning, coming up, we have on the 20th of November at CITB ANI General Awareness. Now, all of our business improvement events are really for us to engage with the industry to find out, look, what's your training needs and things like that, and also to provide an element of training with it. So basically awareness training type courses we're running, such the likes of which this morning. So general ISO awareness coming up on the 20th of November, and then following that on the 4th of December, we have using ChatGPT effectively in your construction business. And then in January, then we're starting off with ISO 14001 and then public sector tenders for small construction business on the 23rd of January. We have events running right through until June, and you'll get the full list of these events on our website. Also, we have a number of heritage training events coming up. We have received funding through Cressy to provide, and also the Heritage Fund and the Historic Environment Department for Communities, and we're providing a number of heritage training events. And this is really for anybody out there who wants to diversify or add to your skill set and find out a bit more about working in older traditional pre-1919 buildings and all of the knowledge and understanding you need to be able to do that for the different sectors and different occupations there. So we have coming up on the 7th of November, building regs for older buildings, conservation and compliance. And then the 21st of November with damp, mold and condensation in older buildings. And then the 5th of December, defects and repair of historic steel frame buildings and reinforced concrete elements. Now, those are webinars. Some of these webinars, I think most of the webinars are free. There are some hands-on job sample and taster events as well. And I mean, there's maybe a small cost to some of these, but mainly I think they're pretty either free or pretty heavily subsidised. So if it's something you're interested in finding out more about, again, you'll find all the full list of events on the heritage or on the training events section of our website. And you'll be able to go on. There's all links. We do all our bookings through these events on Eventbrite, and I'll give you all the full details of the programme and things like that. So by way of a grants update, we've made 2.1 million available this year for the grant scheme. The grants range from £15 right up to £2,000. So basically it depends on what training you've been doing or whatever, how much money you will get back. There's a number of terms and conditions that apply to the scheme, and you can download these from our website. There is a grant cap on short duration training only, so that's one of the categories of grant. We have several categories of grant, but there's only a cap on one, and that's capped at 100% of the levy that you pay, or if you don't pay a levy, it's capped at £500. But all the other grant categories, there's no cap on. So in terms of getting your grant then, you must return your annual return form before the deadline. Now, that's usually the end of August each year. That's really what I would call your passport to being able to avail all our products and services, like things like your free training availability or through the mobile training unit and all of the grants and things like that. So that's very important that you fill that in and get that returned to us. Claims must be submitted within 3 months from commencement of the training onto a registration or upon registration onto a course. Now you can fill out your grant application forms online and submit them that way, which is obviously the easiest way to do it. And then we'll acknowledge submission of that, and we'll keep in touch with you then to make sure that we get all the support and info when there's a 3-month deadline for that as well. And we'll, keep in communication with yourself to get all the relevant information in so that we can get that money paid back to you. Just to highlight our apprentice grant then, at the moment we have up to £6,500. If you're considering employing an apprentice from day one or you are employing an apprentice, there is potentially a grant there for you of up to £6,500, and it's paid throughout the duration of the apprenticeship programme. And this is for apprenticeships NI. So it's paid out. There's obviously year 1, year 2, year 3 employment grants, and also for achievement of relevant NVQs there. So a really good grant and a good incentive. If you're thinking about employing an apprentice, well, there's no better time from the point of view of the funding that we can help to give you to support you to do that. Now, this is for any apprenticeship in your business. It doesn't have to be like a trade like bricklaying, plastering or joinery. It can be if you want to take on an IT apprentice, if you want to take on a marketing apprentice, any apprentice, as long as they're on an approved apprenticeships NI programme. And all of the private training providers and local colleges can deliver those. So have a chat with your college if you are thinking about taking one on and find out more from them in terms of what way it all works. There's also additional DFE grant as well, and that's really on achievement of level 2 and level 3 qualifications that your apprentice will gain throughout their apprenticeship term. So the potential grant there then, you're looking at £8,174 for that apprentice over the full term of the apprenticeship. So say could be up to 3 to 4 years. And there's no cap on apprentice grants either. So as I said earlier, there is a cap just in one category of grant, which is short duration training, but there's no grant cap on this grant. So it doesn't matter how many apprentices you have, there's no cap on that. So that's great. Higher level apprentice grant. So if you're thinking about taking on somebody who has a level 3 qualification or above, so somebody maybe stayed on and done A levels and they really want to go and do a part-time degree course, foundation degree course, and you want to take on a higher level apprentice, then there's the funding there to do that as well. And that's again up to £6,500, but it depends on the course and the duration of that course, how much of that you will get. So for any grant from ourselves, if you're unsure, what I would advise you to do is find out as much information as possible and then contact our grant support team. Who'll talk you through the grant and what you need to do, and we'll support you right through till you get everything that you're due. So in terms of the levy for this year, yes, I was just saying earlier in terms of the grant scheme, make sure you get that annual return form in. They usually come out for completion around about, I think it's about May time, and then you have until the end of August to get that completed and sent back into us. The levy rate's 0.55% for this year, and the threshold is £80,000. So just to highlight a couple of other things to you, our Adopt a School scheme is progressing well, and we have a number of employers signed up at the moment who want to be paired with the school in either the local or work area to promote construction careers. Now we have nearly just under 90 schools registered who say that they want to pair with a company to promote construction careers. Now this is a free scheme. We sort of facilitate in terms of we sort of give you a list if it's something you're interested in, maybe help meet your social corporate responsibilities and things like that there. And you want to get into school, you know, there's plenty of skills needs, and we need more people to come in the industry. This is a good way of helping that to happen, and you looking for your future workforce. So, I mean, we can help you. We've got resources and things like that. You know, we can bring mobile training to schools, but it's a great scheme. And if there's anybody on here this morning who's interested in joining that, just get in touch with myself. I put a link into the information to send out after this directly to the more information about the Adopt a School programme. But we'd love to see more employers joining up, because we have 90 schools waiting in the wings who want to pair. They want you to come in and talk to their students about careers in construction. We're also in the process of implementing a new IT system, and we need all employers who are registered with ourselves to verify their emails. There is a link on the homepage of our website where you can go on and be able to do that, and we would encourage anybody who hasn't done that to do that, just to keep everything right. And this a new system will give you better access to our information and everything else. So the contact emails for the grant section and the levy, and also just for any general inquiries you have as well. And we're also on Facebook, X, LinkedIn and Twitter. So if you follow us on those social media channels, then you'll be able to keep up to date with everything that's going on with our sites. Okay, so that's my bit over for now. I'll come back on and talk about more about the grant scheme in relation to the CSR scheme. But I am going to hand over to Jonathan, who for the main presentation on the CSR scheme updates. And I'll see you all shortly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thanks to William and Amanda at CITB for inviting me along to talk about the Construction Skills Register today. My name is Jonathan Cahy. I'm currently the Federation Manager at the Construction Employers Federation, which is the certified representative body for the construction industry in Northern Ireland. I started at CEF as a graduate trainee way back in December 2005, and basically they haven't really been able to get rid of me since, so I'm still here. My role involves managing both CSR, which I'm here to talk about today, and Safety Cert, which is our third-party health and safety management system. And I also facilitate our health and safety committee, amongst other things. As I say, thanks very much for having me along today, and hopefully you'll leave with a better understanding of the changes to CSR. Okay, so bear with me 1 second. Yeah, there we go. So I thought I'd start with a quick summary of the running order so you know what to expect. I'm going to begin by spending a bit of time highlighting the Building Mental Health Alliance and the introduction of mental health as a topic covered by CSR. I know that's not strictly what you're here to hear about, but mental health is such a massive issue, it just seemed like a too good an opportunity not to mention it. Then I'll set the context with a bit of information on CSR and where it's come from. And that's going to include some information on the recognition of CSR in neighbouring jurisdictions. I'll explain the reasons the changes are being introduced, run through a timeline of the main changes to date, the key bit of the presentation then, so you have to stay awake until then, highlight some of the guidance that's happened, that's been produced to assist the industry, and then I'll finish with some ongoing plans, a testimonial to show how it is achievable, and then you have an opportunity to grill me at the end. Ask you to bear with me. There's a lot in this presentation, and so I'll try and get through it as quick as I can. But so yeah. It's always good to start a presentation on a positive, so I'm going to spend a little time talking about the Building Mental Health Alliance. So what is the Building Mental Health Alliance and what's it all about? So it was launched on the 10th of October 2022 on World Mental Health Day. So it's going for over 2 years now. What it is, it's a collaboration of industry bodies, large contractors, and other workplace health and safety organisations. So it has CEF, Northern Ireland Safety Group, FMB, Mineral Products Association, the NI Construction Group, Build Health, Graham, Farrens, McLaughlin, Harvey, Henry Brothers, and of course CITB are involved as well. And really what the BMHA, it sort of works together with the aim of creating better mental health awareness, support and training for everyone working within the NI built environment sector. Really, it was formed because it was recognition that mental health in the Northern Ireland construction industry had to be addressed. We've all seen those statistics, and it's a big issue. The one that really sticks out is that 2 people a day, every single day in GB and Ireland take their own lives within the construction industry, which is just a shocking statistic. We're not experts by any stretch of the imagination, but we want to use our reach and influence to be able to reduce the stigma. So focusing on collaboration, information sharing is a really key point of the Mental Health Alliance. We've established relationships with 11 local charities and organisations that are there to offer guidance and direct help. And the Mental Health Alliance is a focal point really for that information and guidance. There have been a number of initial outputs. There was the awareness video that was produced by CITB that demonstrates to construction workers the importance of looking out for their colleagues and that support exists for those experiencing mental ill health. And if you haven't seen it, I would really urge you to go and check it out. You can get it on YouTube. It's a really great resource. It's local actors and it really hits home the message. So definitely go and check that out. There's a CSR mental health module, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second. We have launched a website, and that basically has access to the 3 24/7 helplines, and it also signposts to organisations that provide advice and support in areas such as anxiety, depression, suicide, addiction, and financial worries. One of the big sort of things is the QR code, which you can see on the slide. It's just a way to get really easy access to the website and therefore the information and guidance, and also direct access to the 3 24/7 helplines. The strap line is you're 2 clicks away from help, so it's really easy to access that health and support, and we would ask you to share that widely across your sites and offices. As I say, really it's trying to grow awareness and reduce stigma. Really positive thing is that the Mental Health Alliance just recently won an award from the Safety Group UK, and it was for innovation about sharing information on mental health. So really positive outcome, and there's lots more to come. So obviously, watch this space. So the CSR mental health module, I'm just going to talk about that for a little bit in more detail. So initially at the start, the Mental Health Alliance looked for easy wins, and the CSR ticked the boxes here. So it's a great way of getting basic information to lots of people. It is a basic overview, but again, by talking about mental health, it's about breaking down the stigma, and that's really the whole key part of it. It's initially been included in the operatives course, and that was because that was the largest number of people attend that particular course. Again, really positive that it's been delivered to over 36,000 candidates since it was launched in November 22. So that's a huge amount of people have had really basic mental health training. Generally, the module highlights the signs of mental health to look out for, and then obviously signposts the candidates to some of the organisations and charity that provide help locally. We had the content checked by mental health professionals from Inspire Wellbeing, and also provided training for all the CSR trainers who wanted it. That basically we wanted them to feel confident delivering on a sensitive subject, and also to know what to do if somebody made a declaration during or after the training. We're currently developing content for the manager and senior manager course, because obviously people across the industry are impacted. Those people have almost a dual role in that they obviously have to look out for their own mental health, but they do have a duty of care for their employees. So there's a slightly different focus then on that training. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the main part of the presentation about CSR and what you've all come to hear about. So I want to set a bit of context to start, really. So CSR is the card scheme for the construction industry in Northern Ireland. It's used where there's building, civil engineering, maintenance, workshops. It's probably fanned out a bit wider than traditional construction over the years. It was launched way back in '97, so it's over 25 years old. It's owned by the Joint Council, which is made up of both employer and employee representatives. So the employer reps are appointed by CEF and the employee reps are appointed by trade unions. And then Construction Federation Services administers the scheme on behalf of Joint Council, and they're responsible, that's me and my team really, responsible for the production and issue of the cards and all that's kind of associated with that. The scheme covers roles in the industry from apprentice right up to senior director and all that's in between. Obviously, it involves health and safety training, and the different levels of health and safety are the operative course, supervisor, manager, and senior manager. Historically, it also included an assessment of skills, but obviously we're moving towards qualifications, and that's the biggest change and what we'll talk about in more detail later on. CSR has been driven by its inclusion as a requirement in the Build Safe NI initiative, which was a coming together a number of years ago of employers, employees, government, and various other stakeholders to reduce injuries and fatalities in the construction industry in Northern Ireland. So health and safety training, as evidenced by CSR equivalent, is a requirement on public sector contracts. So I want to be clear, it's not a legal requirement, but it is seen as best practice within the industry. And ultimately, I suppose, as a passport to employment within the industry in Northern Ireland. It's not often you see a job advert that doesn't ask for CSR. Okay, so the training is delivered by 27 accredited training providers. They are based all across Northern Ireland, and the aim is to give easy access to candidates just the whole way across the province. They are required to comply with the service level agreement, which outlines the requirements they must meet, and that includes venue, trainer, admin, all that sort of stuff. They also need to have ISO 9001 for CSR admin processes, and all of this is really geared towards ensuring consistency across the network, so that if you turn up training in Belfast or Newry or Derry, you get the same service across all the training provider network. We also back that up by admin audits, service delivery monitoring visits, and then monthly checks on card applications. And survey employers that have received training recently, just to ensure that we're continuing to provide a high level of service across the network. There's currently about 80,000 or so active cards at any one time, and those card volumes have remained steady. There hasn't really been any drop off since we announced the changes. Okay, so moving on then to recognition of CSR, and I've included this slide as it's something we get asked about quite a lot, really. And I mention recognition because it's important, because the Northern Ireland construction industry exports a lot of labour to neighbouring jurisdictions, and anyone that's been in the airport on a Sunday evening can see the evidence of that. It's also important in the context of why the changes are being introduced, and I'm going to cover that in the next slide. But CSR is one of 38 schemes in the CSCS Alliance. So that basically means that CSR cards are accepted in GB, because all the schemes within the CSCS Alliance are based on the same requirements, and are also working together on a number of strategic priorities, including big data, which is all the schemes combining pseudonymized data together so that we can spot trends within the card schemes across the UK, and also fraud prevention, which has become a bigger issue. Then the South of Ireland, the Republic, CSR is the only training accepted as equivalent to SafePass. That relates specifically to the CSR one-day course for operatives. So basically, if SafePass is required on a site in ROI, your CSR card will be accepted if you've completed the one-day CSR course for operatives. And how you know that's the case is it says accredited safety training on the reverse of the card. We've done a lot of kind of liaison with Solus to provide them with a list of the cards that are accepted, and they've been sort of shared widely down south, because I know it can be difficult getting people to understand, but there's stuff on the Solus website as well. On the slide there, that's taken directly from the Solus website. So that's all fairly straightforward so far, but where it starts to get complicated is that in ROI they also have a card scheme called CSCS, but it's not related to the GB CSCS scheme. So there was a piece of legislation, a piece of Irish legislation, so it's Schedule 5 of the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Construction Regulations 2013. And so that includes a list of prescribed occupations that require specific training, and that includes plant, scaffolding, roofing, sign, lighting and garden, and a few others. It's all the information is available on the Solus website, but anybody working in one of those occupations is legally required to hold a Solus CSCS card. So therefore, things like CSR plant cards aren't accepted in the Republic. There was previously a workaround under a recognition of qualifications EU directive that enabled anybody with an NVQ level 2 to have that accepted on a temporary basis, but Brexit impacted that, and that's no longer the case. Solus do say you can still submit information to them on a case-by-case basis, but I would say anecdotally we're hearing that most of the time that you're required to go to Mount Lucas in Offaly and do a bit of further training to get a Solus CSCS card in those particular areas. There are changes in process or in progress. Sorry, it's currently going through the Irish Parliament, and they're trying to make some changes, and we have had discussions with Solus about how we can potentially look back towards mutual recognition with things like the plant cards when that comes on board. But obviously we'll update the industry if that is the case. But I suppose overall, just to kind of summarize this slide, in relation to recognition and portability, I think actually CSR is in a fairly unique position that the majority of our cards, and I say majority, it's not all of them, but they're accepted across the entire UK and Ireland, which isn't the case for SafePass and CSCS. So now I want to provide some clarity on why the decision to implement the changes that you've heard about, why those decisions were taken. And I often get the impression that when I speak to people on the phone that they think that I personally dreamt these up, but I can definitely assure you that that's not the case. It really goes back way back to 2015, stretching back so far that I actually still had hair at that stage. But basically the Construction Leadership Council, which is a body made up of representatives of the England and Wales construction industry and the UK government, they announced the One Industry logo requirements as an action from their industrial strategy, Construction 2025. The aim then of that was to have the industry in England and Wales, including trade associations, contractors, clients and government, to specify and promote card schemes carrying the CSCS logo for all public projects with no equivalents accepted. And then the objective was to provide clients, employers, contractors with a consistent means of recognising that an individual has achieved the agreed qualification in the occupation they're working in, and give the industry confidence in a single brand. There was issues in England where because as I say, there's 38 card schemes. We are based in Northern Ireland, but in England there's a wider number, and people on site were getting completely confused as to what was accepted. So they wanted to focus it in around the CSCS logo, so that was an easy way for people to identify whether the card that was being presented was acceptable. So where does CSR come into this? CSR has always had the CSCS logo on our cards. We were one of the original CSCS affiliates, but for the reasons mentioned in the previous slides, about recognition and portability of the workforce. So the Joint Council, the owner of the scheme, decided that CSR needed to comply with the requirements to ensure that the CSCS logo remained on CSR cards and continued to be accepted in GB. Failure to do that would have meant that anyone with a CSR card wouldn't have been able to access a site in GB, and because there's so many people going over, we felt that was important to maintain that. So CLC then, as part of this, they set down a number of minimum requirements that had to be met in order to retain the CSCS logo. Schemes are audited twice a year to ensure that they maintain compliance with the requirements. We had our most recent audit there was in late July, and thankfully we've got through, and so CSR continues to comply with the requirements. And I thought it was worth mentioning, as part of previous audits, I have mentioned the significant kickback from the industry about the changes, and the auditor acknowledged that several other schemes have made similar points, but ultimately CLC aren't changing their position. There's no change to the requirements. There's going to be no extensions to the deadline or anything like that. And I think particularly in England, the impact of Grenfell and the Hackett report, that's really shone a light on competence. Obviously, the Building Safety Act has come in to force in England and is likely to follow at some stage here. And it's likely that schemes are going to have to continue to change to meet these ever-changing needs of both government and industry, and so evidence of that is ongoing CPD is one of the potential things that is being talked about as moving it forward again. Okay, so this is the first of 3 slides on the changes, so I'm not going to go through each point in detail here, but really the point of this slide is to highlight that changes started as way back as early as 2016. The industry and trainer providers were made aware of the changes as part of a 3-year plan in 2020 back to that was back in 2017. The first change made was the introduction of AQP and PQP cards. So these were introduced as options for those with construction degrees, HNDs, HNCs, or membership of professional bodies. And I suppose the point I want to make from the slide is that it's only really recently that candidates have started to take notice of these cards and apply for them in any sort of significant number, and it just sort of highlights that the change can be a bit of a slow burner. They've been in place for a long time, but only really being used now. So the first big change in the move towards qualifications was the removal of occupational assessments for managers and senior managers back in April 2018. From that stage, those applying for a new manager or senior manager card were required to have a level 6 or 7 NVQ respectively from that point onwards. We are always keen, though, as a scheme to introduce other options. I just talked about the AQP and the PQP cards. We also introduced the Experience Manager card. And so what that is if you've signed up for an NVQ, but you haven't completed it by the deadline, there's a card. It basically means that the candidate gets a card, they continue to be carded, and it recognises their experience and that they're working towards a qualification that's recognised. Obviously, it also buys them some time. And I would imagine, and we can see already that as we approach the deadline, that these are becoming more used. I would stress though that it's a one-time only card. You do have to, they can't be renewed. You have to achieve the qualification and then obviously move on to the card related to the qualification. It's not just managers that these are aimed at. We have experienced worker cards that follow the same requirements and experienced supervisors. So that the same sort of proviso applies, that people have to be signed up to one of the relevant NVQs but haven't completed it yet, and they can get those cards. Okay, so then I suppose the introduction of the changes really started to pick up pace in April 2019. The long existing GCO card was replaced with a labourer card, and again this was to meet the CLC requirements that stated cards for new entrants, apprentices, trainees, labourers or workers in the process of obtaining a formal qualification will be clearly and easily identifiable. And so that's where the GCO was replaced with the labourer card, and there's no longer any GCO cards in circulation. Joint Council also took the decision at this stage to introduce the health and safety training card, and that's significant because it doesn't meet the CLC requirements, so it doesn't have the CSCS logo on it. But the GCO at that time had become a bit of a catch-all. It was used by plumbers and electricians who didn't fall under the remit of Joint Council, but had agreed that the health and safety training was necessary to comply with the Build Safe initiative. Basically, the health and safety training card, it really all it is it's proof that you have completed the one-day CSR training for operatives. So it's accepted in Northern Ireland as meeting the Build Safe initiative, and it's accepted in the South because it's equivalent to the because of the mutual recognition agreement with Safe Pass. There was then two, I suppose, watershed moments really that followed in quick succession. The removal of all remaining occupational assessments, so that any new cards would have to be issued on the basis of a qualification. And then the biggest announcement about NVQs for skilled cards from the end of 2024. And I'm going to just cover that off now in the next slide here. Okay, so two CLC requirements are important here. The first was that they said that the minimum standard for skilled occupations is an NVQ level 2 qualification relevant to the occupation the person is working in, plus a separate health and safety element. And then secondly, a transition process to bring all existing card holders up to the minimum standard by 2020 had to be agreed and implemented. That latter point was then interpreted as a plan had to be in place by 2020, so hence the announcement in December 2019 that all skilled cards previously issued on the basis of occupational assessments and industry accreditation from the 1st of January 2020 would expire on the 31st of December 2024. So basically, anybody who didn't have an NVQ or an accepted equivalent when they were renewing their card after the 1st of January, they started to be short dated to expire at the end of this year. Obviously that was announced in December 2019, so that was to give industry a significant period of time to transition, and worthwhile mentioning that all the other changes in the previous slides weren't just announced with immediate effect. There was obviously warning of those changes. So what cards are impacted? So there's the blue skilled card, which now needs an NVQ level 2 or equivalent. The gold craft card, which requires an NVQ level 3 or equivalent. The gold supervisor, that requires an NVQ level 3 or 4 or equivalent. The platinum manager, which requires an NVQ level 6 or equivalent. And the black senior manager card, which requires an NVQ level 7 or equivalent. Worthwhile making the point that if a relevant qualification is held, there's absolutely no difference to the way the scheme would have operated. The card would be issued for 4 years from the date of the health and safety training as normal. But if the relevant qualification isn't held, cards, as I say, expire on the 31st of December 2024, so a couple of months away at this stage. So they obviously started off being valid for 4 years if you did the training back in January 2020, but they have reduced down the closer we get, and they're obviously only valid. There's nobody really getting these cards any longer, but they would only really be valid for 2 months at this stage. Another really important point to make is that it doesn't impact labourer cards, and that's important because the labourer cards, or previously GCO, as I mentioned before, they have always been the largest card category issued. So it means that a lot of people aren't impacted by these changes. Another really important point is I keep talking about alternatives, and so there are a range of alternatives that are accepted. So the first one to mention is City and Guilds Craft and Advanced Craft certificates, and we've accepted those, and that's really positive for older card holders, for want of a better way of putting it, because these are the qualifications that preceded NVQs. We also accept apprenticeships, and then for the higher level card, we have already mentioned, or have already mentioned, degrees, HNDs, HNCs, and professional memberships. There's also a route for overseas qualifications. So there's a process whereby an organisation, a government-backed organisation called ICTIS, can provide a statement of comparability. So they will look at qualifications gained overseas and will map them against NVQ qualifications and or degrees, and in effect say that's equivalent to a Northern Irish qualification, in which case if it's one of the ones that we can accept, we would accept those for a CSR card. Okay, so guidance for industry, which is really, really important. So one of the key information sources used to guide the industry is our website. And over a year ago, it was updated to have a specific section on industry accreditation and how to move off these cards to cards based on a relevant qualification. This information was all produced by a national industry task force, which included CSCS, CITB, GB, awarding organisations. We received the information then and Northern Irelandised it, because we're always slightly different, obviously, in Northern Ireland. It has flowcharts highlighting all the options available, and it has a FAQ section, and feedback's been really positive. It's a good source of information for people, but really I suppose the main messages that industry guidance included was that candidates should check to see if they have an NVQ applicable to their current occupation. If they don't, obviously alternative, as I've mentioned, alternative qualifications are accepted, including City and Guilds, craft and advanced craft certificates, overseas qualifications, construction-related degrees, and professional qualifications. I often say at this stage that I think there's quite a lot of poking around in attics going on at this stage. People are producing qualifications that they maybe have sort of forgotten about or packed away, but the other main points then is that if a candidate doesn't have an accepted qualification, they have to register for and complete an NVQ. That doesn't mean going back to college, as there are routes available that include experience worker assessments and professional discussion. And then grants obviously might or maybe available from CITB for levy paying employers, and Amanda's going to cover that off a little bit more after I finish here. But I suppose the not going back to college point is something that we've been saying on the phones from the start. And whilst this guidance isn't earth-shattering, but getting people to understand that an NVQ, getting people to understand the different ways NVQs can be achieved really helps massively. There's examples of a level 3 NVQ in occupational work supervision being delivered in 4 2-hour sessions. Feedback's been really positive. Talked about it was the individuals had to provide information that they have to hand because they do it every day, but it also made them think about how they're going to do things, and resulted in changes for the better and how they worked. So really, I suppose if you take away one thing from today, it would be that NVQs is not going back to school. It's just demonstrating what you do on a day-to-day basis against a national standard. I've mentioned the flowcharts that were included as part of the national guidance. There's flowcharts available on the CEF website in the CSR section, and really the aim of those flowcharts was to guide cardholders who have a card issued on the basis of occupational assessment and industry accreditation on how they move to an appropriate card. We do have flowcharts, separate flowcharts for Blue Skilled, Gold Craft, Gold Supervisor, Platinum Manager, and Black Senior Manager cards. I'm not going to go through them, but they really echo the kind of points I made on the previous slide, and there's a sort of step-by-step process that people can follow to understand what the requirements are. Then earlier this year, following on from engagement with CITB and FMB, we compiled a list of available NVQ qualifications. It's accessible on the CEF website. There is a link there in the slide you can see, but if you just type NVQ, into the search bar, it should kind of direct you to the right place. So currently we have 227 NVQ qualifications included on the list from level 2 to level 7, and that's across 30 to 40 different providers. The list's really easy to use. You can search it by qualification, training organisation, and it also includes the postcode and telephone number, so you know where they're based and how to easily contact them. I would say it's not exhaustive. There's going to be other providers out there delivering relevant qualifications, but it's just there to give an initial helping hand, a place where people can have a look and try and source a qualification that is required. Worth pointing out that some of the training organisations on the list are based in England, but we have checked with them and they can deliver NVQ qualifications remotely. They do this through interviews over the phone or Zoom or Teams or whatever. There's maybe employer testimony involved, online portfolios, and then they can do like videos of site visits, for example. So this is really useful because there are some of the more niche qualifications that aren't available through a Northern Ireland provider. So it gives people an option and they don't have to travel to England to get the qualification. I'm not trying to put you off that route, but I just think it's really worthwhile to mention that you should kind of do your homework on these organisations, independently check that the qualifications are being issued by an approved awarding organisation, and if you need some sort of help or guidance on that, get in touch and we can kind of help you, just to make sure. The worst thing we want to do is guide, if somebody goes off, does their own research and they pay money to an organisation that doesn't provide what they say that they will on their website. So back to the list then, it has been updated and we will continue to do so. But we're noticing that there has been a definite shift in the availability of qualifications. Training providers have been in a difficult position where they weren't sure if people were going to go down the NVQ qualification route, and obviously there's investment on their behalf to be put in to kind of provide the qualifications, but definitely as the deadline's approaching, there are more and more people looking for qualifications and more providers are stepping up and delivering those qualifications. Okay, so before I summarize, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the ongoing plans and actions that are taking place. Obviously, we continue to communicate the message. We've been writing to individuals in advance of their card renewing to let them know about the changes since the end of 2019. So that way, the employer and the employee both get direct communication, so they're aware of the steps that they have to take, and that's obviously going to continue. We must have issued close to 100,000 letters to individual card holders in that time, and obviously on top of that, letters to employers. So there's been lots and lots of communications have gone, direct communications have gone out. The webinar is going to be available online, so it's just another resource there if you need to look back. Then we've just sort of in the process of introducing another big change, so that basically anybody that has a card that's been short dated to the end of December 2024, they can upgrade their card to another relevant card that they meet the criteria for, and the card will be valid for the remainder of the 4-year period from when they originally completed the health and safety training. And so really the aim of that is they don't lose out on the duration of the health and safety training that they originally completed. And also there'll be no card cost attached to that upgrade. So there are a couple of options for people here. So obviously if they've completed the NVQ in the interim period, they can upgrade to the full card based on the NVQ. If they register for the NVQ between now and the end of the year, they would be eligible for the experienced worker, supervisor, or manager cards that I've talked about previously. Or if they don't want to go down, they decide they don't want to go down the qualification route, but they want to have proof of health and safety training, which will meet the public sector requirements for health and safety training in Northern Ireland. They can go down the health and safety trained card route, which is just they'll already have done the health and safety training, and they would just extend that out for the remainder of the 4 years since they originally did the health and safety training. The other thing then, we have Joint Council have approved an appeals process for people who have completed qualifications but can't find a record of the qualifications. These are really aimed at people who did apprenticeships years ago. We've met with CSCS a lot on this, and they already have an appeals process, and we've tried to mirror that as best we can. Do get in contact with me if you want a full list of the information that needs to be provided. That then goes to an appeals hearing with Joint Council, and they decide whether a card can be issued based on the information provided. So it is an option for people who can't find qualifications that they have completed. I wanted to just put a testimonial, and I borrowed it off a training organisation's website because I think it addresses a few of the big misconceptions that are whirling around the industry on this. The testimonial comes from Henry Brothers, so they're very well known, respected NI construction company. I feel bad that I can't include the name of the training organisation, but it's hard to single one out because it's happening across the board. But I thought it kind of just hit the nail on the head, because a couple of the points. So it talks about it being fast track, so it doesn't need to be a long drawn out process, but there has to be buy-in from the candidates. Candidates that completed it were pleased at this stage of their career, so they're obviously experienced candidates, but got satisfaction from achieving a qualification. The process was thorough but relatively pain-free, so there is work involved, but it is achievable. They talk through their skills and demonstrate their abilities. So it's about showing what you do on a day-to-day basis. And my boss mentioned the other day that he saw a post on LinkedIn, and it was from someone who'd been in construction for 35 years, urging others in a similar position not to be daunted. The NVQ process was manageable, and it was just about explaining what he did on a day-to-day basis. And it's really positive for us to hear this from people who've gone through it, and it's not this huge mountain that people are envisaging that it is. So we have evidence that it definitely is achievable for everyone, and it has positives too. It's not just about ticking a box. So thanks for listening to all that. Appreciate it's a lot to kind of cover, but I wanted to finish with a couple of key messages for you to take away from today's presentation. There are obviously significant significant changes happening to CSR, changes that won't be easy for some people, but ultimately it's going to leave the industry with a more robust card scheme going forward. The changes aren't a choice. They're needed to retain parity with GB. CSR certainly doesn't want to prevent anyone from getting a card, and we're working hard to make sure that that's the case, and there are options available for everyone. And finally, I suppose I think the industry is on a bit of a journey. We're kind of behind GB in the respect that they are very resolute on having the card for the job that you're doing. This is where we want to be, but we're a bit behind the curve. And it's likely there's going to be further changes that we'll need to implement to keep pace. And I thought I would finish on a bit of a lighter note, but it's relevant because it's reinforcing kind of the key takeaway from today. I think I must be going through a bit of a midlife crisis, but I can't afford a sports car, so I've got a few tattoos recently. And I often joke with the team in the office that we should get team tattoos when this is all over. And if we had to get one, this would definitely be it. So as you can see, an NVQ is not going back to school to learn how to do the job you've been doing for years. It's simply demonstrating what you do on a day-to-day basis against the national standard, and that can be done on site or through discussion, and it's definitely not in a classroom. So we are going to do a Q&A session at the end, but I'm going to hand back to Amanda, who's going to cover some information on the CITB grants. But before I do that, just want to say thank you very much for sticking with me. I know there was a lot there, but there obviously we can chat through some questions when Amanda's finished updating you on grants. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so I'll just share my screen again, and we'll talk you through the grant scheme then. As John was just saying there, yes, we'll share all the relevant information, the recording, the slide decks from this morning, so you have it all and then you can share it with your colleagues. Just a reminder of the Q&A box. If you have any questions before the Q&A commences, just put them into that and we'll address those as we go through the Q&A. Okay, so this is the CITB NI grant scheme in relation really to and focusing on grants for getting the NVQs to renew cards and also for any first time cards being issued. So yes, we're just moving into the grants then. For this year, this current year, 24-25, NVQ achievement for existing workers, an NVQ level 2 on achievement of it's £500, and for achievement of a level 3 it's £750, and on level 4 through to level 7 it's £1,000. Now this grant is payable on achievement of relevant NVQ and includes any workshops, experienced workers assessment, which leads to the overall achievement of the award. The grant payable obviously will be determined by the level of the NVQ awarded. So the most there just depends again on the level, how much money you'll get back towards the cost of all the training and associated with getting the NVQ. In relation to health and safety training that's covered under short duration training, that's £80 per person per day. Now that is part of the grant capped category, that one, but if you haven't reached a cap or anything like that, well then you'll get the full £80. Obviously if the course costs you less than £80, then it'll be prorated. Should the amount, yes, so that's really what the next bullet point saying, should the amount of published grant exceed the net training cost, grant will be paid at the actual net cost of training. Industry registration scheme cards, achievement of initial recognised CSCS UK affiliated scheme card, no grant available for renewal or upgrades, but there is a £25 grant available for white, green, blue or gold cards and £50 for platinum or black cards. Essential information in relation to claiming these grants. Grant claims can only be submitted for employees who work in Northern Ireland and are declared on the employer's annual return form. The deadline for all annual return forms, including options and new registrations, must be adhered to, otherwise grants will be restricted. So as I was saying earlier in the first part of my presentation, yes, that's really your levy return form, and that needs to be in it usually by the end of August, and that'll come out around May or June time. The only category of grant that will be capped for now being non-levies is short duration, which I mentioned earlier as well, and this is for training courses lasting up to 10 days. The health and safety training grant is included in the cap, so just bearing that in mind, it depends whether you pay a levy, it's capped at 100% of what you pay, or if you don't pay, it's the £500. So all grant claims received must be received by CITB within 3 months of commencement of training or upon registration onto the course or apprenticeship scheme, otherwise the grant will be declined. Employers are encouraged to make grant claims online. Obviously, this will be the easiest option for yourselves. If you do need any help with making a grant application form or getting online or any way to do that, then just get in touch with the grant support team. All support and information within 2 short duration training course must be received within 3 months of training taking place. And that's that. The full grant scheme is on the grant section of our website, along with all of the relevant terms and conditions. I can also send you a link to that, and then you have that to hand as well, and along with all the other information from this morning. As I mentioned, if you have any queries in relation to the grants, either give us a call, the grant support team, or that's the email address, just simply grants@citbni.org.uk. The same if you have any queries or anything, you want to know more information on the levy, the same, and then for any general inquiries. And as I say, we're also on all those digital and social media platforms. If you just keep up to date and like us and follow us and knows, then we'll keep you abreast of everything that's going on with ourselves. So that's it. As I said earlier, I'll send you out all relevant links following this morning's presentation, and then whenever Jonathan gets us over the recording and things like that, we'll get that out to you all in one email. We'll also send you out a link, and you probably got it whenever I sent you out a reminder just about this morning's event evaluation form. So we would we really appreciate it if you could fill that in and send that back to us as well, because obviously we're always looking for feedback on our events. And also there is a section in that evaluation form that if you have any training that you haven't been able to get or is new to your sector or whatever, just let us know what that training need is, and we see if we can do anything to address that training need, and maybe talk to other companies who has the same training issue, or even if there's short duration topics that you want more us to provide in business improvement events like this or face-to-face events, just let us know. And then we'll try to look to put those on for you. Okay, thank you very much. That's my presentation concluded this morning as well. I'm now going to hand over to William, who's going to lead the Q&A this morning before we finish up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks Amanda, and thanks Jonathan for both very informative presentations. Got a few questions in here. I'm just going to try and summarize them. I'm afraid they all seem to be pointed in your direction, Jonathan, but no surprise there, I'm sure.
No.
So the first one is just regarding the alternative qualifications, and the question here is asking about the traineeship qualification isn't listed as one of the alternative qualifications.
Yeah, this is something that we've looked at recently, and the traineeship are a relatively new qualification route through from colleges mainly, and we have had a look, and I've checked in with CLC auditor, and we can accept traineeship qualifications for a CSR card once the traineeship is completed. We can issue, I think it's usually a blue skilled card based on that. But really, we have had some conversations with at least one of the colleges, and do get in touch if you need a bit more information on that, and traineeships in particular, but they will be accepted.
Is that something then, Jonathan, that you would be updating on the website? Would you be saying that to contact us about traineeships?
We should. I just haven't had a chance. It's been a relatively recent kind of question that came through, and we just had to kind of jump through the hoops of CLC just to make sure that we're we don't want to break their rules, because then sure. So we need to make sure, but that it was confirmed, so we'll update the website and the information.
That's great, thanks. The next one here is an interesting one. We have a final year civil engineering student in India asking how can they apply to get a CSR card.
Okay, so say they're a final year
civil engineering.
Okay, so
in India,
we have the most obvious card for that is that there's a trainee supervisor manager card, and that is aimed at people who are studying at university and potentially working in a supervisory or management role, and they have to be registered on a recognised degree course or third level qualification, and obviously a degree in civil engineering would fall into that category, and they have to do one of the health and safety training requirements to meet that side of the card. I'm not sure from the question, William, just the way it's posed there, forgive me, if the student is in a final year degree course in India. If that's the case, obviously they would need to go through the ICTIS comparability route. But if they're on a, if they're at Queen's or UU, then the degree that they're on would be accepted. They wouldn't have to go through that route.
Yeah, I think looking at the question, I think they actually are physically in India. So that would be the ICTIS route, was it you called it?
Yeah, so there's a UK government-backed web portal, and you go, if you log onto that, it'll talk you through the statement of comparability.
Okay, well, just on that, I'll jump over one question and come back to it. But there was another question just around the ICTIS, and this caller, this question comes from somebody who has a Danish journeyman certificate in January, but they seem to be having difficulties in getting it provided translations for the certificate and the modules. They're still looking for certificate supplements or a transcript of results or mark sheets from something that was achieved in 1997. That's back when you had hair, Jonathan. So they're asking, and the question is really, can we appeal this? And if so, how do we do this?
I actually think I might have had some sort of conversation with the person that has posed this question. If they want to get in touch with me directly, I can talk them through the appeals process. It's sort of awkward because there would be a process. There is a process there through ICTIS, and they have to be able to satisfy themselves based on the information provided that the qualification is equivalent to a UK-based qualification. It sounds like that might not be the case, but I don't know the ins and outs. But if the person or their employer wants to get in touch, obviously I talked about the appeals process. I don't know if it's relevant in this case, because if it's not a UK-based qualification, we haven't really covered that before, but we can certainly look at it. We're trying our best to accept any qualification that I spend my time online researching qualifications and where they've come from and what they're equivalent to. If somebody has done something, we will try where possible to accept it, but obviously there has to be limits. But if they want to get in touch with me just by contacting through the CEF switchboard, I can talk to them separately.
Okay, thanks for that. So a couple of other questions here. Now, this one is about this person has a CSR Gold Supervisor's Card, and that was issued in September 21. And they're wanting to clarify if they can have this extended until September 25.
Yeah, well, they can if they meet certain provisos. So in effect, historically, if they did it in September 2021, that would have been issued until September 2025, because the majority of cards are issued for 4 years from the date of the health and safety training. But they have to have a qualification. And if they didn't, it was short dated to the end of 2024, because that then is forcing people down the route of getting a qualification. So either they would need to have an NVQ level 3 in occupational work supervision, or an NVQ level 4 in construction site supervision, or the other option would be that they register on one of those qualifications, and they would be issued with an experienced supervisor card. These ones are slightly awkward, and people have and if they do that, based on the fact that it would be extended to September 25, there would be no card cost associated with that. They just need to register on the NVQ and let a training provider know, and they will apply for a card that will be issued experienced supervisor until September 25. I did mention, though, people going down that route, the experienced cards can't be renewed. So the person has the decision to make whether they want to do the renewal of the training course, and then the experienced manager card would be based on a date 4 years from the date that they do it. So they would have 4 years from now, for example, or they can take it on at the free card until September 25. The thing being, at this stage, you could still complete an NVQ, between now and the end of the year. So if they register and complete the NVQ, even if they haven't started it now, they could get the full supervisor card at that stage, and it would be valid until September 25. And then obviously they need to just do the normal renewal process of the health and safety training, and then the full supervisor card would be extended for another 4 years when they complete their health and safety training again.
Okay. A test of your knowledge of acronyms now, Jonathan, for you. So this question is, are the CITB, SSSTS and SMSTS an alternative, or are they equal to the NVQ supervisory management qualification?
Yeah, okay.
So that's required.
The SSSTS is the Site Safety Supervisor Training Scheme, and the SMSTS is the Site Management Safety Training Scheme. They are health and safety courses. They're not qualifications, so they're not equivalent to an NVQ. We accept, so CSR accepts the SMSTS as equivalent to our 4-day site safety supervisor training. So they are the health and safety element. The person, if they want a card, would need to still do an NVQ qualification in supervision, because the SMSTS proves their health and safety. They've done health and safety training, but they still need to prove their competence as a supervisor, which would be done through the NVQ. In England, it's, well, sorry, I'll maybe start with here. The health and safety training and the qualifications are linked as part of the requirements for a card, whereas in England, it's the NVQ is the main requirement for the cards, and that you have to do a health and safety test online. But what we hear is that most employers in England, if you're working in, say, a supervisory or a management role, they will ask for the CSCS card or equivalent, which would be CSR, but they'll also ask for evidence of health and safety training, which would be evidenced via the SMSTS or SSSTS. But in short, no, it's not accepted as equivalent to an NVQ because it's not a qualification, it's just a training course.
Okay, and along sort of similar line, we have a question in here. I have 2 persons completing NVQ4 to obtain gold cards. In the meantime, does the training provider claim these? I'm not quite sure.
It might
understand that question.
It might be the experienced supervisor cards. So yes, if I sort of interpret that, I would say that they're maybe asking if they have people doing the NVQ at the minute, does the training provider apply for the experienced manager card so that they'll get the extension before it's completed? And yes, that would be the case if you mentioned the training provider. Obviously, the caveat there is that they might have completed the NVQ by the deadline, in which case they would just upgrade to the full card, but the training provider will take care of all that if they just kind of explain what they want. The training provider that's doing that does their CSR stuff normally, if they contact them.
Okay, thank you. And I've just got one going back to the earlier question about the trainee qualification, and then the alternatives for that. Question from the same person. How does an apprentice or trainee access sites while studying an NVQ or traineeship qualification?
So we have both apprentice and trainee cards, and so if you're on apprenticeship, and it has to be an apprenticeship, like a recognised apprenticeship through Apprenticeship NI, then you are issued, you do the 1-day health and safety training, and this is all done through, colleges, or that are putting people through. They do the 1-day health and safety training with these people, and they're issued with an apprentice card, which is valid for 4 years. In which case, they would complete their qualification, and get a like a skilled, if they achieve an NVQ level 2 as part of the apprenticeship, or if they go on to NVQ level 3, they would get a gold craft card.
Yeah.
But they're given an apprentice card. I need to just double check in relation to the traineeship. I'm not sure whether that will be attached to the apprenticeship card, or so that the other card I mentioned is the trainee card, and that's for people who are studying qualifications that lead to like NVQs and things like that. But it's not an apprenticeship, and I don't want to commit to something without we need to look exactly as to whether the traineeship would fall within a trainee card or an apprenticeship card. But again, if the person wants to contact me directly, I think I might know who is posing that question anyway. And we've been going back and forth, so yeah, we can
just for the benefit of others on the call. An apprenticeship, and the difference between an apprenticeship and a traineeship is employment. Apprenticeship ANI, you need to be employed. Traineeship, you don't. I just have a couple of other small questions, Jonathan. Do you have a feeling so far with people going through and achieving their NVQs? Do you have a feeling as to how long it's taking people to actually get their NVQs? Experienced worker with no qualification.
Like it's how long is a piece of string? I suppose is the answer to that question. I suppose the point I would really like to make is it's not a 2-year process whereby you're going back to learn how to do what you're doing on a day in, day out basis. What I'm hearing from the providers that are doing NVQs is quite a lot of the time it depends on the effort put in by the candidate. And so we have one provider that has been very successful, particularly in supervisor NVQs that I mentioned in the presentation, and they are doing they are getting an NVQ level 3 in occupational work supervision, and the people have to attend 4 2-hour sessions. But they have to do a bit of stuff like information gathering in between times and things like that. So it's very tightly controlled, and if they provide the evidence that they've been requested before the next session, then it's really quick. Whereas we've had other providers on saying it's been very difficult. You ask people to provide information and then you don't hear from them for 2 months, and in which case it drags out. But so it's kind of the gift of the candidate and their employer to help them along, and it can be achieved relatively quickly.
And sort of total of 8 hours face to face with a trainer, and that's a day.
That's one example. It depends on the level of qualification, the route that they go down. There's lots of different variables, but it can be done quickly. So that's, I suppose, the message I want to get out there.
Okay. Well, just on the back of that, a question has just come in there to say that you say that NVQs isn't like going back to school, but is there still computer worker portfolios to be produced? This can be off-putting for people who've spent their working life on a site. Well, I think the answer to that is yes and yes.
Yes, it can involve that, but the training providers are working with industry. They're trying to adapt their processes as best as possible. It doesn't have to be the individual. It has to be the individual evidence of their work. But I've talked to people who have engaged maybe someone from the office to help out, or a family member or whatever. It is achievable. It might not just be the individual that uploads the stuff if they're not completely computer savvy, but it's definitely doable.
Okay, and probably a rather obvious question for me, but so if I'm 25 years working on a site, no qualifications, nothing there, competent in my job, can't get an NVQ, don't want to go down that route, can I just get a labourer's card?
We wouldn't recommend a labourer card unless they're working as a labourer.
Sorry.
We would, in that situation, if they are steadfast, don't want to do an NVQ, the option we would suggest is the health and safety trained card, and that simply is proof that they've done health and safety training. It doesn't reference their competence or the area that they work in at all. I would clarify, just for the avoidance of doubt, that I've said throughout the presentation that card is accepted in Northern Ireland and in the Republic, but it's not accepted in GB because it doesn't have the CSCS logo on it. But ultimately, if you're going to GB, they have requested NVQs for years, so it's unlikely that you'll get on site without having an NVQ if you're going to work in GB.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks for that, Jonathan. That seems to be all the questions that we have. So if everybody's content, I will just bring the meeting to a close, or the webinar, should I say, to a close. And thank you all for attending. Hope it was useful. And we will be circulating around the recording, or the recording will be available. Isn't that right, on the website?
Yes, that'll be out next, hopefully before the end of the week.
Okay, that's great.
Everything will be out with everybody. Yeah. So thanks
Great.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.